Sable, what are you doing here?
I'm not staying. I just came to pay for our wife's lunch. The first thing Aaron Greer did when I walked into that private dining room was choke on his water. Not steak, not wine, water. A man can choke on anything once his body works out the truth before his mouth does. He'd been mid-sip when he saw me. The glass came down too hard and caught the edge of his bread plate, and a little wave of it jumped the rim onto the white cloth. He coughed into his fist, coughed again, reached for his napkin, and missed it on the first grab. Across the table, his wife did not move the way he moved. Kalina had been cutting into something, and she finished the cut before she did anything else. Then she laid her knife and fork down at the angle people use when they've decided they're done. No clink. There was no scramble to stand, no grab for a phone. Her water came up instead, one slow sip, and the glass went back down precisely inside the ring it had already left on the cloth. That was how I knew which one of them to watch. Aaron made noise. Kalina made a ring on a tablecloth and put her glass back in it. I came the rest of the way into the room. The bag on my shoulder weighed more than a bag that size has any business weighing, and I left it up there a beat longer than was comfortable because I wanted them both to watch me carry it. Cream leather. The kind of expensive that doesn't announce itself. The corner of a book showed at the top. Everything else in there could wait its turn. Aaron got his breath back. Sable. It came out wet. He pressed the napkin to his mouth and tried again, lower, in the voice he used when he wanted to be the calmest man in the room. "What are you—" "I'm not staying," I said. "I just came to pay for lunch. I'm going to leave us right there." In the gold light, with the water on the cloth and the napkin halfway to his mouth and Kalina watching me like a delivery she'd been expecting. "I want you sitting in it the way I made them sit in it. Because before I tell you why I paid for lunch for a woman whose husband I'd spent 3 years sleeping with, I have to tell you something embarrassing. I have to tell you how I got dumb enough to think Aaron Greer was a prize. So let me take you back, before the bag, before the receipts, before I learned that the cheapest thing in any room is the man who's sure he's the most valuable thing in it. 3 years ago, I was an interior designer, which meant I spent my days convincing rich people that beige had emotional range. I was good at it. I could walk into a sad little condo with low ceilings and a contractor-grade kitchen and make it photograph like a place where generational wealth came to rest. I knew how light moved. I knew that a warm bulb forgives a cheap finish and a cold one exposes it. I could make a room lie for you, gently, the way a good dress does. What I could not do, at 31, was make my own life photograph like that. My business was growing, slow. The kind of slow where the growth is real, but the rent does not care about your trajectory. I had clients who paid late and clients who paid in exposure, which is the word broke people use to make cheapness sound like a favor. I had tastes that arrived years before the money to fund it, and that gap is its own special kind of ache. And I had a manuscript, 200 pages of a novel I kept abandoning, because survival has a way of interrupting creativity right at the good part. I'd open the file, write a paragraph that scared me a little with how true it was, then close it to go answer an email about whether a client could get the sectional in a different gray. There is always a different gray. There is never time for the true thing. The one steady fixture in my life was Imani. Imani had been my best friend since we were 19, and broke in a way that was funny instead of frightening. She'd grown up into a divorce attorney, which suited her, because she had never once in her life softened a true thing to make it go down easier. She didn't give advice so much as hand down verdicts. Sitting across from her was like being read your own chart by a doctor who'd quit believing in bedside manner. You walked out knowing exactly what was wrong with you, whether you'd come ready to hear it or not. We had a standing thing on Thursdays. Wine that cost slightly more than we should have been spending, at a bar with good lighting that I'd silently graded the first time we walked in. "You're tired." she said that particular Thursday, before I'd said anything. I'm fine. You're tired and you're about to tell me you're fine, which is how I know you're tired. She sipped. When's the last time you opened the book? I didn't answer. Imani let the silence sit there. It was a lawyer's habit. She'd learned that if you don't rush to fill a quiet, the other person will, and most of the time, they fill it with the very thing they were trying not to say. Survival keeps interrupting, I finally said. Yeah, okay. She looked at me over the glass. Survival's a good excuse because it's also true. Those are the dangerous ones. You sound like you bill by the truth, I said. I do. Hourly. She set the glass down. Here's one for free. A growing business doesn't need you rested. It needs you finishing things, the book included. The book doesn't pay the rent. Neither does the third gray you picked for a man who was always going to choose the first one. She let that land, then softened by maybe half a degree, which from Imani was practically a hug. I'm not telling you to stop eating. Just don't let the eating become the whole point. You used to talk about that book like it was a person. It was easier when I had the time to miss it. She tipped her glass toward mine. Make the time, before something else makes it for you. I should have written that down. I should have written down everything Imani ever said to me. It would have saved me about 3 years. 2 weeks after Imani asked when I'd last opened my book, I met the man who'd make sure I didn't open it again for a long time. His name was Aaron Greer, and I met him at a furniture showroom, which is exactly the kind of place a man like Aaron goes to be seen buying nothing. Imani had dragged me there on a Saturday. She was redoing her living room and wanted my eye, which mostly meant she wanted company while she touched expensive things she had no intention of purchasing. We were standing near a $4,000 chair when I noticed him. Hard not to. He had a phone propped on a little tripod and a ring light he'd carried in himself on a Saturday into a furniture store, and he was working his way down the aisle, narrating to no one. He picked up that chair, turned it toward his camera and said, "This is what intention feels like." Then he set it back down and kept walking. He hadn't come to buy a chair. He'd come to be filmed almost buying one. Imani watched him for about 4 seconds. Oh, he's a whole personality disorder, she said, not even quietly. Look at the light. He brought his own light to a couch store. I laughed, and then I made the mistake of being good at my job out loud. I told Imani the chair was overpriced by half and stapled together where it should have been joined. The only honest thing on the whole floor, I said, was the lighting, and somebody competent had clearly been paid for that. I didn't bother lowering my voice. Aaron heard all of it. Men like him have radar for a woman who sounds like she knows something worth standing next to, and he came over. And he was, I'll admit it, something to look at up close. Tall in a way he clearly knew the angles of. Built like a man whose whole personality was the gym, with a beard kept so precise, it had to be a standing appointment. He dressed the way he'd lit himself, every piece chosen to show he'd arrived. Most men shrink a little when you catch them mid-performance. Aaron tapped the phone to stop recording, slid it into his pocket, and the showroom narrator voice dropped into something lower and warmer, like he'd been looking for me specifically, and was relieved I'd finally turned up. You design, he said. Not a question. He'd clocked the way I was looking at the room. I do. I could tell. You look at a space like you're correcting it. He smiled. Most people look at a room and ask if they like it. You look at a room and ask what it's hiding. Let me be honest, because it matters to me that you don't think I was stupid. That was a good line, and worse, it was a true one. I had spent my whole career making other people's tastes look like their own idea, and Aaron was the first man in a long while who complimented my work, not my face. He did it on a Saturday, in front of a chair I couldn't afford, and I felt myself lean toward him the way I lean toward good light in a bad room. Imani did not lean. She took one slow look at him and said, "What do you do?" "I have a podcast," Aaron said, in the way men say that now, half apology and half threat. He shook my hand and told me his name like it should land. Aaron Greer. It didn't. So he handed me the podcast instead. The Standard, he called it. And he left a little space after the title for the recognition he was expecting. Neither of us filled it. I watched the wince show up behind his eyes and get smoothed over fast. He told me he was redoing his studio space and his home gym. He wanted it to say discipline, success, leadership. I nodded and made a professional face and privately thought, so it must currently say protein powder and unresolved insecurity. He took my card. He did not mention a wife. In the car, Imani buckled her seatbelt and said, "He's married." "You don't know that." He didn't mention a wife. Single men can't wait to tell you they're single. She started the engine. "And the money he's wearing is newer than he wants you to think. The watch is this season, but the shoes are 3 years old and Risoled, and a man who's always had it doesn't let those two share an outfit." "You got all that from a couch store." "Baby, I get all that for a living." She glanced at me. "He's going to call you about the studio. Do the job, take the check, and leave it there." A beat. "You won't, but I said it, so it's on the record." It was definitely on the record. He called about the studio 2 days later, exactly like Imani said he would. I did the job, and I took the check. Those were the parts of her advice I had no trouble with. It took 3 weeks. Most clients hover through the first session, then vanish and let you work. Aaron did the opposite. He found reasons to be there. Twice he showed up with 2 coffees like we'd planned it, set one down by my tape measure, and leaned against the one wall I'd already finished to watch me decide which design direction his life was going to take. That's how Kalina came up, not all at once, in pieces, across 3 weeks. The way a man tells you a thing he's told himself so often, the edges have gone smooth. The night the marriage came out was when the studio was done. I was packing my kit, and he was standing in the middle of the room I'd made him, not leaving, the way people don't leave a place when the only thing waiting at home is a mirror that they can't face. "Looks like somebody serious works here," he said. "That was the brief, wasn't it?" "Yeah." He ran a hand along the edge of the desk I'd chosen for him, slow, like he was checking it for dust that wasn't there. "She's going to hate that I love it. She has opinions about rooms." "Your wife?" "My wife." He'd been waiting for somebody to ask, and now that I had, the rest came easy. "Kalina. She does interiors. Did. Now she does everything." The laugh that came after had nothing funny under it. "You'd know her work. Everybody does now." I did know her work. I didn't tell him that yet. "We were good," he said. "We're good. We're just a little off these days." I caught the slip the way you catch a hairline crack in a ceiling somebody painted over. Were. Are. He couldn't decide which one was the lie, so he used both and let me sort it out. "I held it down, back when it was nothing," he said. "I was consulting, 6 figures, covering the mortgage while she was still trying to get the thing off the ground. I believed in her before there was anything to believe in." He turned the cup in his hand. "People see the money now. They don't know who was paying the bills while she was still dreaming. Here's the part I need you to understand, because it's the whole reason any of this worked. I believed some of it. It sounded reasonable. A man who held it down before the money came, who got left behind when the spotlight swung the other way. That happens to real people." I sat on the bench beside him and felt sorry for that version of Aaron, the one who showed up early and watched the party start without him. What I didn't understand yet was that he wasn't telling me the story to be understood. He was telling it to build a case. A designer learns to hear the difference eventually between a man describing his life and a man laying a foundation. Every "I was there before the money" was one more course of brick, and what he meant to build on top of it was his own permission, to feel owed and to take it back later and call the taking fair. That night, though, in the studio I'd built him, with the good light doing exactly what I'd promised, he just sounded like a tired husband who'd married, leveled up in life, drifted apart, and couldn't admit it out loud. So I stayed and let the sympathy in through a door I should have kept shut, and told myself I was only being kind to a client. I knew exactly who Kalina Greer was before Aaron finished saying her first name. Anyone in my field did. You don't work interiors in this city and not know Greer House in Haven. What I did that night after I packed up my kit and drove home was something worse than not knowing. I went looking. I found her the way everybody finds everybody now. Midnight, light blue, scrolling, hell. She was the version of me that had not stalled. Kalina had started exactly where I was. Luxury interiors. Making rooms lie beautifully for people who could afford the truth and wanted the fantasy anyway. Except she hadn't stayed there. She'd expanded into staging, then renovations, then commercial design, then real estate development, then home goods, licensing, and hospitality. By the time I was looking at her, Greer House in Haven was valued at somewhere close to $900 million, and her own net worth had crossed into the kind of number you usually only see attached to a national debt, not a person. I sat on my futon with my growing but not fast enough business and my abandoned manuscript, and I looked at a woman in my exact industry who had built a billion-dollar empire. To be honest, I felt two things at the same time, and they did not cancel each other out. I envied her, and I had a need to study her. She was the obstacle standing between me and the man I was starting to want. She was also a blueprint, hanging right there in the blue light of everything I told myself I could still become. Her photos were quiet. That was the part that got me. Nothing she posted was loud. A clean shelf, a hand around a cup, the back of her own head as she looked at an ocean she clearly owned that afternoon. She wore success the way other women wore perfume, lightly, so you'd lean in to make sure it was real. And in interviews, she thanked Aaron. That's what undid my neat little picture. Kalina Greer went on record and called that man her rock, her first investor, her safe place when the company was nothing but an idea and a card table. She gave him the credit publicly, generously, in a way that cost her nothing because she had everything. And there he was, in my phone, acting like a neglected houseplant with abs. That should have been my answer right there. A woman that gracious to a man that resentful of a woman like that, meant the math didn't work unless the problem was him. But I was 31 with taste I couldn't afford, and a man telling me I had the kind of mind people miss, so I did what people do. I took the data and I filed it under complicated, and I went to bed. I'd love to give you a scene full of wine and weakness. The truth is duller and worse, which is usually how it goes. It didn't start with sex. It started with attention. Aaron was good at attention the way I'm good at light. He knew exactly how much to put on a thing to make it glow, and exactly how little to leave it looking cheap. The late calls came first, the kind that run past the hour friends call. Then the voice notes, because Aaron loved a voice note, loved the sound of himself being gentle. Did you eat today? Send me that invoice, I want to see what they're paying you. You're undercharging and it's insulting, let me help. Those last 3 words that cost me years. At first, the help was just good, and that's the part nobody warns you about. He'd been a consultant, and it turned out he was actually good at it, and he aimed all of it at me. He'd look at a proposal I was about to send, find the line where I'd talked myself down, and make me raise it. The client would pay the higher number without blinking, and I'd sit there holding money I'd never have asked for on my own. He taught me to stop apologizing in my emails and to walk away from the clients who were going to cost me a year before they got the chance to. For a woman who'd been doing all of it alone on a futon, having things handled by someone competent felt like a window cracking open in a room I hadn't known was stuffy. Then came the softer things. Flowers on a Tuesday for no reason except that he'd been thinking about me, which is a sentence that does more damage than it should. A spa day booked under my name because, he said, I'd been running myself into the ground and somebody ought to notice. That was the real hook. Not the money, the noticing. I had spent years being the one who noticed everybody else's rooms, and here was a man paying attention to mine. The money itself started small. The first transfer I called business. It was a software subscription, an investment in your talent, $40, and it felt like being believed in. The second one was bigger, and I called it support. By the fifth, I had stopped naming it at all. Direct deposit does not require emotional clarity. It just arrives, soft and regular, and you build a story around it that helps you sleep at night. Then a client stiffed me, and the help stopped being a luxury and started being a rescue. It was a big job, a full renovation, months of my life, and when the last invoice came due, he simply stopped answering his phone. To chase it, I'd have needed a lawyer I couldn't afford, to sue a man with more money than me over money he already owed me, which is the exact trap built for people without a cushion. I sat in my car outside my own building and cried the ugly way because I'd already spent that money in my head, turned it into rent and breathing room, and now it was nothing. With my nasal passages stopped up like traffic on Monday morning, I called Aaron. I still can't tell you why him. He came, and he sat with me in that car and let me be a mess without trying to fix my face or hurry me out of it. A few days later, the loss was just gone, quietly handled, and when I went to thank him, he waved it off like I'd dropped a glove and he'd picked it up. A man who catches you the first time you fall has told you something without saying a word. He's told you he's the floor that you can stand on now. We crossed the actual line not long after, in the studio, with the new acoustic panels still in their plastic. After that, the money stopped pretending to be about work. A better laptop appeared, for the writing, which is how I knew he'd been listening, because I'd mentioned the book exactly once. Rent help became the rent. A wardrobe showed up that matched the rooms I was suddenly walking into, the dinners, the trips where he introduced me as the consultant, because a consultant can stand beside a married man in a hotel lobby and the lobby doesn't blink. The gifts came already wrapped, which is its own small insult, because the wrapping is for his conscience, not your hands. I was not proud. I want that on the record too. Pride is expensive, and rent was due, so it was not something I could afford. I knew Aaron Greer had a wife, just like I knew red velvet cake had calories. That didn't stop me from taking a bite. It just meant I knew exactly what I was eating while I ate it. The thing nobody tells you about being kept is how good it feels at first. Not billionaire mistress good. Just better, in the small daily ways that pile up into a different life. Half a year went by before I noticed it had. The futon went to the curb, and I did not attend its funeral. In came the furniture I used to specify for clients and never sat on myself. My calendar loosened because comfort buys you the time to chase the work you actually want instead of the work that only keeps the lights on. My hair appointments moved to a salon with no prices on the menu. And the best upgrade of all, the one I'm still a little ashamed to name, was the quiet. The moment a bill arrived and my stomach didn't drop. You don't know how loud your life has been until somebody else pays for the silence. Aaron came around often. He'd stretch out across my new couch and talk about Kalina, how she didn't see him anymore, how the money had changed her, how I was the only one who understood him. "You know what it is with you?" he said one night. watching me across the room like I was a thing he'd gotten right. You see me. She looks at me and sees overhead. You look at me and see the man. The man that's still married, I said, because somebody in the room had to. For now. He let it sit, the way he let everything sit, with no date attached. These things have an order to them. You don't demolish a foundation before removing the house. Leaving came up the way weather comes up. Someday. When the timing was right. He never put a month on it, and I never made him. I just need time, he said, and the first dozen times, it sounded mature. I told Imani about it over our Thursday wine, months into the thing, the way you confess something you've already decided to keep doing. She didn't say anything right away. Her eyes went to the bag hanging off the back of my chair, dropped to the nails I couldn't have afforded the last time we'd sat in that bar, and came back to my face. She did the math the way she does, fast and quiet, and reached the answer before I'd handed her the question. So you did the job, took the check, and kept the man, she said. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, you just decorated it. She set her glass down. Who's paying for the apartment? I didn't answer. She let the quiet stretch until it got heavy enough to mean something. That's what I thought. She said it gently, which was worse than if she'd been smug. I do this for a living, Sable. I don't sit across from the girlfriends. I sit across from the wives. They come into my office with a folder and a face like a closed door. And somewhere in that folder is a woman exactly like you, with her dates and her hotels and her transfers all printed out. You know what those women never once called the situation? Enlighten me. Complicated. The wife never thinks it's complicated. She thinks it's simple math. She turned her glass a slow quarter turn on the napkin. He wanted the best of both worlds and forgot that the wife had a choice. Come on, Imani. You know, there's a version of this where you call me in 6 months, laughing because he left her and married you, and I was dead wrong. I've never seen that version once, not in 10 years of watching the other side win. He's going to leave her. She didn't pounce on it, and that was the part that got under my skin. No triumph in her face, no I told you so loading up behind her teeth. Just something that looked too much like worry, pointed straight at me, and I wasn't ready to be looked at like that. No, baby, he isn't. A man leaves when staying starts to cost him more than going. Right now you're easy, and his wife is expensive, and she's the one signing the checks that keep you easy. She reached over and tapped the rim of my glass, light, like knocking on a door nobody was going to answer. You're not his future, you're his amenity. I felt that one land somewhere under the ribs, in the place that already knew. So I did what you do when a friend who loves you hands you the truth a couple of years before you're built to carry it. I changed the subject. I set it down on the table between us, ordered another round, and pretended I hadn't heard the part I'd be repeating back to myself, word for word in the dark, 2 years later. Here's the part I still can't fully get over, and I've had time. Aaron's podcast was called The Standard. He recorded it in the studio I built him, in front of a backdrop of fake books, the spines facing out, titles you couldn't read because the whole library was a wall sticker, a man selling discipline, with a bookshelf you could peel off with a hairdryer. I noticed it the first day. I never stopped noticing it. Over the months that followed, I had a front row seat to the gospel according to Aaron. He posted clips between episodes, 2 or 3 a week, and I watched them the way you watch a storm you're already standing inside. A real man protects his household. Loyalty, he told his followers, is just discipline with the lights off. He said that one from a couch I picked out, with a straight face, and I remember thinking it was a lot of words for a man who couldn't manage either thing. The comments were what started to sit wrong. People believed him, and not casually. Men wrote paragraphs about how his videos were holding their marriages together. One woman, I still remember her little gray profile picture, wrote that her husband had cheated and she didn't know how to trust him again. And she asked Aaron what she should do, and he answered her, publicly, warmly, like a man who'd earned the right. He told her trust gets rebuilt in the boring, ordinary days, by a man willing to choose her over and over until she believed it, and that she deserved exactly that kind of consistency. He also told her that her husband's cheating was all bookkeeping. Everything you do in the dark goes on a ledger somebody eventually reads, and now it's on her to decide when that debt's been paid. He typed it with his thumb while my head was on his chest. I read it over his shoulder and felt something go cold in me, because that was the night I understood I wasn't the only one being lied to. There was a whole congregation. That woman was going to go home and try to trust a man she had every reason not to, because Aaron Greer told her she deserved consistency, and the only thing Aaron was consistent about was me, every Tuesday and Thursday, in an apartment his wife was quietly paying for. It went on like that for the better part of a year. He got smoother, the slogans got tighter, the numbers climbed, and the better he got at selling the thing he wasn't doing, the more wine it took before I could sit through a clip. One night he posted an episode called something like Legacy Men Don't Move Careless, and it started doing real numbers fast, so I watched it from my apartment. Yes, the one he paid for. In a robe he bought me, eating organic grapes he'd sent grocery money for, the $8 kind that judge you from the bowl. He looked into the camera, jaw set, ring light catching the hint of oil on his forehead, and he got going. A man's first job is his home, he said. Not the money. Anybody can make money. I'm talking about presence. You know how many men think a transfer or a bill paid counts as showing up at home. He let that breathe, the way he'd learned to. A legacy man doesn't keep a woman comfortable so she stays quiet. He keeps her chosen by choosing her daily. There's a difference, and if you don't know it, that's the whole problem right there. I put a grape in my mouth and forgot to chew it. The careless ones always think they can get away with doing the bare minimum, he went on. That doesn't cut it. Legacy is about building in your home today so that it can withstand what the future may hold. I paused the video. I looked around my apartment. My rent was paid. My lights were on. My fridge had organic grapes in it for no damn reason. Technically, Aaron was protecting two households. He helped keep both paid for, lit, and comfortable, but he hollowed out the one thing in each that couldn't be sent by transfer. I laughed, alone, out loud, and I need you to understand that the laugh was a delay. As long as I was laughing, I didn't have to do the math on what the laugh was covering. He had a podcast about loyalty and a mistress with autopay. You cannot make this up. I tried to later, and even the fiction thought it was too much. 2 years is a long time to wait for a sentence that never gets finished. By the second year, the affair had lost its glow and kept its schedule, which is the worst thing that can happen to a thing like ours. What used to feel like stolen time started to feel like a standing appointment, Tuesdays and Thursdays, penciled into the margins of a life that belonged to his wife the other 5 days of the week. He still came by, still talked about leaving. But the leaving had grown its own language. And once a man's excuses get fluent, you stop listening to the words and start understanding the meaning. I watched the same thing happen every time he came over. He'd walk in carrying whatever the day had done to him, the brand drama, the manager who didn't understand his vision, the small thing Kalina had said that morning that he kept turning over like a stone in his shoe. He'd stretch out on the couch I picked out and let me lift it off him piece by piece, and I was good at it, because taking the weight out of a room is literally the job. By the time he left, he was lighter, loose, ready to drive home and be somebody's husband. I'd stand in the doorway and listen to his car start, and then turn back to an apartment that somehow held all the weight he'd walked out without. When I pushed, the reasons came out smooth and already worn. The way things sound when they've been said before. A launch he couldn't blow up his marriage in front of. A valuation a divorce would complicate. The media, the brand, the timing that was never, ever right. After a while, I recognized them the way a waitress recognizes regulars. They rotated, but the menu never actually changed. It just reprinted the specials. After the spring, he told me one night, with his shoes already on. You said after the launch. Well, I've got a new sponsorship signing in the spring. You don't move on a marriage the same month you close a deal that size. You said that about the launch, and the holidays, and her birthday? I heard my own voice doing the level thing it does instead of rising. I've started keeping track, Aaron. That's how I know it's not a list of reasons. It's one reason wearing different clothes. He sighed, the patient sigh, the one that turned me into the problem. You think I like this? You think this is easy for me? I think you've never once had to find out, because I keep making it comfortable. That landed somewhere. I watched him decide not to pick it up. He came over instead, took my face in both hands, and gave me the voice from the podcast, the warm one, the one a few thousand men paid attention to. Hey, look at me. I'm not going anywhere. You're the one thing in my life I'm actually sure about. He kissed my forehead like that closed the matter. Just let me do this right. Timing is everything. And the worst part, the part I'm still embarrassed by, is that it worked. Not all the way, but enough. Enough to get his shoes back off. Enough to buy him another season. That was the year I understood what I was to him, and it didn't come as a thought. It came as a feeling, late, in a bed he'd already left, on a night that was supposed to be mine. I'd spent 2 years telling myself I was the woman he really wanted, the true marriage hiding behind the one he showed people. But a man doesn't hide his future in a one-bedroom and visit it twice a week. He hides his pressure valve there. I was the place Aaron came to let the air out so he could go survive the life he was actually keeping. The arrangement worked beautifully for everyone in it except the valve. Married men love timelines until you ask them to meet one. It happened on a Friday, a month or so later, which is a cruel day for it. Friday is when everyone else's week loosens. Mine snapped. He'd called to cancel another weekend trip. Kalina needed him at an event, he said, some industry thing where he'd stand next to her empire and smile for photos that fed his brand. He told me over the phone like it was nothing, and something in me that had been patient for 2 years just quietly ran out. You said after the retreat, I said. Sable, don't start. Before that, it was after the brand deal. Before that, after the tax meeting. Before that, after her birthday. Before that, after the holidays. I could hear my own voice getting level, which is what mine does instead of getting loud. Aaron, I have been waiting through seasons, invoices, and full moon cycles. He sighed. Married men love to sigh when their lies get organized, like you're the unreasonable one for keeping the calendar they made you keep. It's not time, he said. It's been 2 years. You knew this was complicated. No, I said. I knew you were married. Complicated was the gift wrapping you put around it. There was a pause on the line, and I could feel him deciding which Aaron to be. He picked the wounded one. He always picked the wounded one when the smooth one stopped working. You think this is simple because you're not the one with everything on the line, he said. You're not the one who built something and watched everybody forget you carried it. And then he said the thing I'd been circling for 2 years without ever letting myself see it whole. I never told you to put your life on hold. I've been in a lot of rooms where people get bad news. You don't redesign a house after a death or a divorce without standing off to the side while somebody hears a number they can't argue with. The appraisal, the offer, the thing the lawyer says quietly. I've watched what a true sentence does to a person when it lands. Aaron's plane landed right on my dream house. Because it was true. That was the horror of it. He never told me to wait. I had volunteered. I had put my own life on hold and handed him the keys. He'd simply declined to mention that I'd done it based on his lies. He wasn't keeping me anywhere. He was just comfortable, and a comfortable man will let you bury yourself and call it your decision, because your decision costs him nothing. He wasn't confused. I was. Not because I didn't know I was the side chick, because I had forgotten side chicks come with side effects. I didn't cry on the phone. I want you to remember that, because it matters for everything that comes next. The thing that should have come out of me as water did not come out at all. It went somewhere else. It went looking for a place to be useful. You're right, I said. I heard him shift, getting ready to be gracious, getting ready to forgive me for the argument he'd started. Aaron loved nothing more than to win and then be generous about it. You never told me to wait, I said. That was generous of you. He didn't catch it. And that was the single most useful thing I ever learned about Aaron Greer. He could not tell the difference between a woman agreeing with him and a woman closing the account. I hung up. And then, alone in the apartment he paid for, I finally cried. The kind of cry that isn't sad so much as it's the body throwing out everything it's been storing. I cried for the 2 years. I cried for the futon girl who'd wanted to be believed in. I cried because the worst part of being told the truth by a man like Aaron is that he gets to be right while being the reason. And then I stopped. Not gradually. I just got still. I sat there in the dark with my face wet and my mind suddenly, frighteningly quiet, and I looked around at all of it. The good furniture, the paid-up lights, more $8 grapes going soft in their bowl, the whole beautiful set he'd dressed for a play he was never going to let me star in. And somewhere in that stillness, the crying turned into something with edges, something with corners and a shape, something you could organize, something you could put in a folder. The next morning I called him, and I actually apologized. Not because I was sorry, because men like Aaron get suspicious when you stop bleeding too fast. A woman who's still hurt is a woman they can manage. A woman who's gone quiet and calm is a woman they should be afraid of, and I needed Aaron to keep feeling safe for a little while longer. So I gave him all the soft things that he loved to hear. Said that I'd overreacted, that I understood it was complicated, that I just wanted us to be okay. And I could hear the relief in his voice, the relief of a man who thinks the storm has passed and left him a sweeter, more reasonable woman. He had no idea. The storm hadn't passed. Aaron just couldn't feel it anymore, and he made the mistake every comfortable man makes, which is assuming that what he can't feel isn't happening. Because somewhere between the phone call and the apology, I had stopped asking when Aaron Greer was going to leave his wife. I'd finally understood the only question that was ever worth asking, not whether he'd leave her, whether I could make sure that when he did, it would hurt like hell.
And just like that, dreadfuls, Sable Monroe finally stopped asking the wrong question. Because for 2 years, she kept wondering when Aaron Greer was going to leave his wife, when he was going to choose her, when he was going to make all those late nights, hotel rooms, secret transfers, and be patient baby speeches mean something bigger than a man having his cake, eating it too, and charging the frosting to his wife's account. But that phone call changed everything. Aaron thought he had humbled her. He thought telling Sable, "I never told you to put your life on hold," would make her sit down, shut up, and accept the arrangement. Poor thing. He did not realize he had just said the one true thing sharp enough to wake her up. Because once a woman realizes she's been sitting at a table with no plate, no menu, and no damn reservation, she has 2 choices. She can keep starving politely, or she can learn where the kitchen is. And Sable? Sable started looking for the keys. Aaron thought the apology meant the storm had passed. No, darling, the storm had just changed directions. And that direction was where women like Sable do their best work. So if you're living for the betrayal, the bad decisions, the rich wife empire, the podcast husband with too much audacity, and a side chick finally learning that every arrangement has side effects, go ahead and hit that like button. Share this with somebody who knows a smooth talker with a soft voice and a hard lesson coming. And subscribe to Sin Dreadful, because episode 2 is where Sable stops waiting for a seat at the table. She makes her own and pays the bill. Tap that bell, Dreadfuls, because Aaron Greer thinks he survived the argument. He has no idea Sable just became the aftermath.
Don't forget to like and share. Or don't, see if I care. Subscribe for more absolute misery.